The pounding on the walls started again just before dawn. Dust fell from the ceiling beams as if the whole house was shivering. The traveler pressed themselves against the wooden floorboards, heart hammering, trying to silence even their breath. Outside, the forest exhaled long, cold sighs between the trees. Something whispered their name from beyond the door, soft, careful, almost tender. Then the metallic scrape came, slow and deliberate, like a knife dragged across stone. They thought they had lost them 3 nights ago, but the clicking sound, that dry rhythm of bone against wood, returned. The air grew thick with damp rot and smoke. The whisper came again, closer now, from inside the house this time. The traveler's pulse became thunder in their ears. Beneath the bed, something shifted, a shadow too dark to belong. Who had opened the trap door? And how had they found this place again? Silence stretched until the house itself seemed to breathe. The traveler dared a glance through the slit in the shutters. The hunters were gone, or so it appeared. The fog outside was too dense, swirling with faint silhouettes that melted when stared at. Every instinct screamed to run, but the woods had swallowed others before. Somewhere below, the wooden planks groaned again, not from movement, but from breathing. The smell of damp soil rose, mixed with something metallic and sour. A faint voice murmured under the floorboards, not quite words, more like a lullaby hummed backward. The traveler pressed a trembling hand to the trapdoor, feeling warmth radiate from beneath. Then came the knock. 1, 2, 3, from inside the ground. They tried to block the trapdoor with the old wardrobe, but something pushed back. The heavy oak shifted an inch, then another. The traveler stumbled backward, heart crashing against ribs. A whisper rose again, louder this time, shaping itself into their name. The candle flickered out, and in the sudden dark, the sound of fingernails scratching wood filled the air. Desperate, they crawled toward the fireplace, seeking anything sharp, any weapon. A gust of cold air swept through the chimney, carrying ashes that formed shapes like faces before dissolving. From outside, faint laughter echoed. The hunters were not far. The traveler clutched a rusted poker and whispered to themselves, "It's not real." But the trapdoor creaked open. A hand, pale and thin, reached through the gap in the trapdoor, searching the air. It was not rotting but alive, trembling, slow, almost human. The traveler froze, unable to scream. The fingers brushed their boot, leaving a damp streak of blood and soil. Then a voice rose from below, clearer now, a woman's voice, pleading for help. Punti. The traveler's fear fractured. Compassion warred with terror. They knelt again, listening. "Please, help me," the voice begged, soft, shaking. But as the traveler reached toward the hand, another sound joined. The clicking, echoing above now, outside the door. The hunters had returned. The door burst inward with a scream of splintering wood. The hunters stepped inside, silent as ghosts, their eyes fixed on the traveler. The one with the lantern moved first, light trembling, across the room. The female hunter tilted her head and sniffed the air, smiling faintly. The third one dragged something behind him, a length of chain that scraped the floor. The traveler stumbled back, clutching the poker, breath wild and shallow. The trapdoor slammed shut on its own. The sound echoed like a heartbeat. The old woman's whisper returned, faint and cruel. They found you again, and this time you will remember everything. The travelers scream, Cain, in their throat, as the hunters crossed the threshold. The air thickened, heavy, with a scent of wet soil and rust. The lantern's flame flickered in rhythm with the clicking sounds echoing from their throats. The lead hunter tilted his head, and the traveler realized the sound wasn't coming from their mouths. It was coming from within their chests. The traveler swung the poker wildly, connecting with the lantern. Oil splashed, fire burst, and for a heartbeat, the room blazed orange. The hunters didn't flinch. They only stared, faces blank in the dancing light. Smoke filled the air as the old woman's reflection appeared again in the mirror, mouthing silent words. The traveler bolted through the back door, stumbling into the night where the forest waited, darker than ever. The traveler ran until the air burned their lungs. The forest swallowed the last glimmers of firelight, and soon only the moon cut through the fog. The silence here was wrong, thick, deliberate, like something alive. Branches whispered above, bending though no wind stirred. The traveler tripped on a root, collapsing into a shallow ditch filled with black water punza. When they lifted their head, they saw marks carved into the trees, symbols spiraling inward, bleeding sap that glowed, faintly red. Every trunk bore the same design, as if the forest itself was marked by the hunters. From far behind, the clicking began again, echoing between the trunks. It wasn't footsteps anymore. It was everywhere, all around. The traveler pressed their back to a tree, trying to slow their breathing. Then came a whisper from the dark. A voice too close, too soft. "Keep going," it said in a tone like the old woman. A flicker of movement appeared ahead. A faint light, small and steady, like a lantern. Hope sparked, and they followed it through the underbrush, thorns tearing at their clothes. The light drifted deeper, always just out of reach. The forest grew tighter, branches clawing at their hair. When they finally stumbled into a clearing, the lantern hung from a branch, but no one held it. Beneath it, the earth was disturbed, a hole freshly dug. Inside lay something wrapped in their own torn coat. Pinchy. The traveler's trembling hands reached toward the bundle, pulling at the fabric. Underneath, the face that stared back was their own. Pale, lifeless, mouth frozen mid-scream. They stumbled backward, choking, mind fracturing. The forest began to hum, low and resonant. The trees swayed though the air was still. The whispers multiplied, repeating the same phrase again and again. They found you. A figure appeared across the clearing, the female hunter walking slowly, her movements stiff like a puppet sow. The others followed, their eyes unblinking. The traveler turned and ran, but every path twisted back into the same clearing, the same grave, the same body waiting beneath their thorn. Desperate, the traveler clawed at the dirt, trying to bury the body to erase it. Erase. What? A trapdoor, old and slick with moss, identical to the one in the farmhouse. The whispering grew sharper now, almost joyous. The traveler hesitated, staring at their own corpse, then at the door. The clicking came closer. There was no other escape. With shaking hands, they pried it open. A rush of warm, foul air spilled out, smelling of rot and candle wax. Steps descended into darkness. The traveler climbed down. As the door closed above, sealing them inside, the last thing they heard was the hunter's soft laughter fading into silence. The air thickened as the traveler descended the narrow wooden steps, the sound of each creaking plank swallowed by the darkness below. Moisture dripped from unseen corners, carrying the metallic taste of old air. The candle flame trembled, revealing walls carved with the same spiraling symbols that glowed faintly red. The whispers surrounded them now, circling like breath on skin, words too old to understand. The steps ended at a dirt floor slick with mud. Across the chamber stood a wooden table covered in small jars, each filled with something moving slowly inside, like trapped smoke. The traveler reached for one, and the glass trembled under their touch. From within, a faint heartbeat pulsed. The traveler turned at the sound of soft footsteps behind them. The tunnel stretched into endless black, yet something moved, a shadow breaking from the others. The air grew warmer, vibrating faintly, like a living heartbeat beneath the earth. The traveler backed away, eyes fixed on the dark shape approaching. It was tall, slow, and silent, its outline shifting like smoke in water. When it drew close enough, the candle's weak light revealed it was one of the hunters, the youngest one, the one who had once dragged the chain. But now the chain was gone. His arms hung loosely, his eyes dull as a stone. He didn't act. Instead, he raised a trembling hand and pressed one finger to his lips. A gesture of warning, not threat. The traveler's hand shook as they lowered the candle. Soundlessly. He heard soundlessly. Then suddenly he turned his head sharply, as if sensing something behind him. The faint red light along the tunnel walls pulsed brighter. From deeper within, another sound emerged. Whispering voices, chanting in uneven rhythm. The hunter stepped back into the shadows, swallowed whole. The traveler followed, compelled by a force they couldn't resist. The tunnel bent downward, the air tightening, until they reached a great wooden door bound in iron. Then a white candlelight flickered, and the sound of many breaths exhaled at once. They pushed the door open, and the chamber beyond was enormous, a cavern carved into the earth, its walls lined with hundreds of veiled figures kneeling in silence. Candles burned on every surface, their light reflected in still pools of water that mirrored the ceiling's endless dark. At the far end, a stone altar waited. The old woman stood behind it, her black veil glimmering with beads of moisture. Her voice filled the chamber, calm, cold, reciting words that twisted the air itself. "They found you," she said softly, not to threaten but to welcome. "Know you remember where you belong." The traveler's knees weakened as memory returned. The forest, the hunters, the first time they had descended these same steps. The whispers swelled into a single omen that shook the air. The old woman raised her hand, and the veiled figures lifted their heads in unison, revealing hollow faces, the hunters among them. The traveler stepped backward, but the door had vanished. The light dimmed until only the altar remained illuminated. Upon it lay a mirror, its surface rippling like water. "Look," the woman whispered. The traveler obeyed. The reflection staring back wasn't their own, but something older, eyes white and mouth faintly smiling. The truth came with the sound of clicking, steady, rhythmic, coming from within their own chest. The silence after the hum was almost holy. The traveler stood frozen, staring into the mirror's trembling surface. Behind the reflection, faint shapes moved, forests, houses, faces that might once have been their own memories. The old one lowered her hand and whispered, "It begins again." The veiled figures bowed as one, their movements synchronized like a heartbeat. The traveler tried to step back, but their feet were rooted in the wet earth. The whispering returned, this time inside their skull, 1,000 voices repeating a single truth. "You have been here before." The traveler's pulse slowed to match the rhythm of the clicking echoes that pulsed through the chamber walls. When the traveler finally tore their eyes from the mirror, the chamber was empty. The candles burned lower, and the air shimmered with a faint heat. Each breath felt heavier, as if the air itself resisted, leaving their lungs. They turned, searching for the door, and saw only a tunnel stretching upward. The whispers softened into guidance, patient and coaxing. "Oop," they said. "Remember?" The traveler obeyed. The tunnel spiraled, walls smooth and warm like living skin. As they climbed, the light shifted from red to gray, the scent of rain filtering in from somewhere above. A storm waited on the surface. The tunnel ended beneath an ancient well. The traveler pushed the stones aside and emerged into a clearing under a slate sky. The forest looked different now. Every tree leaned slightly inward, as though listening. The storm broke, rain falling in long silver threads. Each drop hissed where it touched the ground. The traveler staggered forward, exhausted, the memory of the underground fading like a half-remembered dream. For the first time, the traveler noticed their own reflection in a puddle. The eyes staring back were not entirely theirs. A thin white sheen catching the light. Thunder rolled across the valley as the traveler wandered through the forest. The symbols carved into the trees now pulsed faintly with each lightning flash. They realized they were not alone. The hunters stood between the trunks, watching but not approaching. Their faces were calm, almost reverent. The female hunter raised her hand slowly, palm outward, as if in greeting. In that moment, the traveler felt no fear, only recognition. A single thought filled their mind. We are the same. The rain softened. The hunters turned, walking deeper into the woods, leaving a path the traveler instinctively followed. The path ended at a hollow tree, older than the forest itself. Inside, the air glowed with the same red light as the underground chamber. The old woman's voice came again, not from sight, but from within the traveler's mind. The forest remembers what the world forgets. The traveler touched the inside of the trunk and felt warm, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. When they withdrew their hand, a faint spiral mark glowed on their palm. Lightning struck nearby, lighting the clearing white. The hunters vanished, leaving only the echo of their clicking fading into the storm. Alone beneath the trembling trees, the traveler understood. They were no longer fleeing the hunters. They were becoming one of them. By morning, the storm had gone, leaving the forest soaked and silent. Mist clung to every branch, and the air carried a metallic stillness. The traveler followed faint tracks through the mud, prints that matched their own. Each step seemed to echo twice, once on the earth and again somewhere beneath it. The spiral on their palm burned softly when touched by sunlight. They felt it pulling them toward a rhythm, a pulse deep in the ground. Ahead, the forest opened into a wide circle where no trees grew. In its center stood a single stone carved with hundreds of overlapping spirals. The air trembled, as if waiting. When the traveler touched the stone, the ground beneath them pulsed a heartbeat. A low hum from the earth, joined by whispers drifting through the trees. The hunters emerged again, all three of them. But now their faces were calm, almost human. They moved in slow rhythm, circling the stone. The female hunter stopped before the traveler and lifted a hand, palm open. On her skin, the same spiral mark shimmered. "Do you see?" her voice said, though her lips did not move. The traveler's thoughts were no longer their own. They were part of something older, vast, and patient. The whispers grew louder, no longer frightening, but familiar. Visions flashed behind the traveler's eyes. A burning farmhouse, faces they once feared, the old woman's hand reaching through the mirror. Then, a deeper memory surfaced. Standing in the same clearing, long ago, joining others in the same circle, offering their own reflection to the forest. The truth struck like lightning. They had been chosen before, reborn again and again to guide the next lost soul here. A single tear slid down their cheek, though it felt distant, as if it belonged to someone else. The hunters watched in silence, waiting for acknowledgement. The old woman's voice drifted through the trees, low and rhythmic. Every voice returns to the root. Every shadow finds its reflection. Her words carried the sound of falling leaves. The traveler's reflection shimmered above the stone-like heat over sand. It split into three figures, one for each hunter, before merging again into the traveler's shape. Their fear was gone now, replaced by an aching calm. The forest no longer looked threatening. It looked alive, breathing with them. The wind moved through the branches like a sigh of relief. For the first time, the clicking sound stopped completely. Night returned softly. The traveler's body felt lighter, their heartbeat matching the pulse beneath the soil. Around the clearing, faint lights appeared, hundreds of tiny floating orbs like fireflies circling the trees. The hunters faded into them, one by one, their outlines dissolving into brightness. The traveler lifted their marked hand, and the light followed, spiraling upward until it vanished into the stars. Only the old woman remained, watching with calm eyes. "When the next one runs," she said gently, "you will lead them home." The forest exhaled. The traveler smiled. A quiet, knowing smile. As the clearing fell back into silence, morning came without sunlight. A pale haze spread through the forest, coloring every surface silver. The traveler wandered the clearing as though it had always been home. The spiral mark on their palm had faded into skin, yet its pulse remained deep beneath the surface. When they looked toward the hollow tree, the air shimmered like water. A faint echo drifted from within. Footsteps, uncertain, frightened. Someone was coming. The traveler stood still, listening to the rhythm of the approaching steps. The sound was familiar, like the memory of a heartbeat they once called their own. The forest stirred. A new story was beginning, and they were no longer its victim, but its guide. They followed the sound through the fog until they reached the edge of the old path. There, a figure stumbled between the trees. A lost traveler, wrapped in the same kind of gray coat once worn by them. The newcomer's face was pale, eyes wide with confusion. The older traveler watched silently, remembering their own terror, their own disbelief. The forest moved subtly around them, trees closing in like watchful guardians. The whispers began again, but softer now, words forming from the rustle of leaves. The traveler lifted their hand, palm outward, and the spiral beneath the skin glowed faintly. The newcomer froze, recognizing something ancient in that light. The older traveler spoke, but their voice carried like wind through branches, not sound, but thought. "You found the forest." The newcomer backed away, shaking their head. "There is a house," they whispered. "Someone's inside." The traveler's eyes softened. The words were the same ones they had once spoken. The air around them vibrated gently, and the faint clicking returned, slower, steadier. Not a warning this time, but a rhythm of welcome. The traveler reached forward, touching the newcomer's shoulder. The forest seemed to sigh as mist coiled upward, hiding both figures from view. When the mist cleared, the newcomer stood alone. The forest was silent again, but the spiral mark now faintly glowed on their palm. They turned in confusion, calling out, but only the sound of rain answered. In the distance, the hollow tree shone like a lantern, its red light pulsing slowly. Inside that light, shadows moved. The old traveler, among them, watching neither ghost nor living being. Their shape flickered like reflection on water, a presence that could not leave nor fully remain. In the sky, thunder rolled once, then fell away into silence. As night settled again, the forest sang in low tones, winged through leaves, distant whispers, rising and falling like breath. The traveler drifted between roots and reflections, watching the world above like a dream. The hunters were gone now, their faces dissolved into the earth, their purpose complete. Only a Joe's remained, gentle and constant. Somewhere above, another storm gathered, and with it, another lost soul would find the farmhouse, the trapdoor, and the voice calling from beneath the floor. The traveler smiled faintly, their eyes bright with calm knowing. The cycle would continue and the forest would remember. The rain had returned by the time the newcomer reached the edge of the clearing. A faint orange light flickered through the fog. The old farmhouse, still standing, unchanged by time or fire. They felt a pull in their chest, the same whisper that had guided every step through the woods. The forest behind them, exhaled as slowly, releasing them into the open. Windows in the farmhouse glimmered like half-open eyes. The newcomer hesitated, shivering, then crossed the threshold. Inside, the air smelled of damp, ash and forgotten prayers. Somewhere beneath the floorboards, a single knock echoed, soft and expectant. Dust swirled as the door shut behind them. The room was almost identical to the memory that lingered in the air. The broken bed frame, the cracked mirror, the rug hiding the trapdoor. The newcomer sat down. A small lantern, its light trembling. A sound came from the glass, a soft ripple. Within the mirror, something moved, a face watching, faint and calm. The traveler, their eyes were no longer human, but deep pools of silver light. They said nothing. But the newcomer felt the words in their chest. You're not lost. You're chosen. The lantern flame flickered, bending toward the mirror, as if drawn by unseen breath. The mirror's surface began to waver like water, disturbed by rain. The newcomer reached toward it, fingertips brushing the glass. A chill ran through her hand, then warmth, a heartbeat answering their own. The room dimmed, the walls fading until only reflection remained. In it, the forest reappeared, trees bending inward, whispering. The traveler stood among them, motionless, waiting. Behind the newcomer, the old woman's reflection appeared briefly, her veil fluttering, as if underwater. Act never ends, her voice murmured, almost kindly. Each only begins again. The farmhouse dissolved into fog. The newcomer found themselves standing in the clearing, once more, moonlight painting the spiral stone pale white. On their palm the faint mark glowed. The same rhythm, the same promise. Around the clearing, unseen voices whispered the same phrase that had begun everything. They found you, but now it sounded different, gentle, like a greeting between old friends. The newcomer knelt beside the stone, pressing their hand against its cool surface. The pulse of the forest answered. Above, clouds parted, revealing a circle of stars spinning slowly in silence. At the edge of the clearing, the traveler watched from the shadows, their form half-transparent, eyes bright with quiet understanding. The forest breathed with them, leaves trembling time with an unseen heartbeat. The newcomer lifted their head, feeling that same rhythm rise inside. Somewhere deep below, beneath soil and stone, the old woman's voice was time. Remember, when they whisper your name, answer. The wind carried her words upward, scattering them through the branches. The traveler turned away, fading into the mist, as an echo began its slow descent into the earth. The circle was complete.